In this video, I'm going to talk about the pawpaw, one of my favorite plants. This video is one in a series about growing an edible landscape in your own yard. In this video, I'm going to talk a little bit about the pawpaw, what it is, where it works well, the fruit, pollinators, and how it can be used as an alternative to honeysuckle. The pawpaw is a fruit tree that grows to about 30 feet tall, 35 feet tall in some cases shorter than that. It creates an edible fruit, and it is native to the Ohio Valley area and a lot of the eastern United States. This is a pawpaw tree I have in my yard that I planted about 5 years ago. It's a Peterson pawpaw called an Allegheny variety. The Allegheny has a very unique taste. This one produced 6 fruits, as you see here, from one flower, and I'll show that flower a little later in this video when I talk about the pollinators. It had several other fruits, like this one up here, and several that are behind the tree you can see back in the back. Unlike other fruits, the pawpaw fruit has to ripen on the tree. When it's ripe, many times it will fall to the ground, or it will be easy to pull off of the tree. So around mid-September, I'll take a look at the bottom of a pawpaw tree and look for fruit. Many times it's untouched, I can wash it off and I can enjoy it. For fruit within arm's length, I'll go ahead and see what is a little bit soft, which indicates it's ripe, and I'll pluck that. If it's firm, it needs a bit more time. Now, for fruit that I can't reach because it's too tall, sometimes I'll just give the tree a gentle shake, and any fruit that is ripe will drop, and then I'll collect it and eat it within a few days. I have a lot more information about the pawpaw, including several specimens I've GPSed around the world from Europe to North America on plantplaces.com. I have a link at the end of the video and also in the comments that will take you directly there. This is one of the first pawpaws of the season, and these are a bit smaller than we usually have, but at least I can open it up and show you what the flesh looks like. So here's the flesh. Doesn't it look delicious? It looks as great as it tastes. As a matter of fact, smell that. Oh no, sorry, you can't. But nonetheless, you see it's kind of a caramelized color. And this particular pawpaw is a Peterson pawpaw called Allegheny. It tends to have a very vanilla-like taste. And as a matter of fact, this is a bit darker than I'm used to for the Allegheny pawpaw. Might be different just because it's a smaller one, but you see it kind of has that caramelized color as well as a kind of a mushy texture, but is absolutely delicious. Now, once you've pulled the pulp out, you want to pull the seeds out, which you can see here, and the seeds are rather big, so they're kind of easy to spot. You also do not want to eat the skin, but I will tell you the flesh is magnificent. It's like you're eating a dessert that's actually healthy. Pawpaw tree is a good replacement for the honeysuckle tree, especially if you're clearing an area that's overgrown with honeysuckle and you want to replace it with some native plants instead. This area where I am initially was so full of honeysuckle I couldn't even walk to the point where I am right now. But I went through with a chainsaw and took it all down and replaced it with pawpaw. Pawpaw has a lot of the positive attributes of honeysuckle, and additionally it has even more positive attributes where honeysuckle has negative attributes. For example, honeysuckle does well because it survives well in shade, and pawpaw also does well in shade. Now, it wants to be in shade when it's younger, but it does want sunshine to fruit, so it's kind of a mix there. You have to pick an area that's just right for it, or do what I did. Plant the pawpaw before you cut down the honeysuckle. Let the honeysuckle give it some protection from sun when it's young, which it needs. Then when it's mature, cut down the honeysuckle, which will allow the sun to reach the pawpaw, which is exactly what I did here. So that's number one, it likes shade. Number two, it's a good screen for privacy. This is one of the first pawpaw plants I planted. Back in the back is a fairly significant tree that's probably about 8 years old. But what's interesting is, when it is in shade and it doesn't get adequate sun, it won't fruit, but instead, it will put up new plants through root runners essentially. So this initial pawpaw plant that I planted, I can count now about 18 unique trees in this patch. If you look at the very big leaf of the pawpaw, you notice that it gives a good screen. You can hardly see what's behind me. So there again, a lot of the positive attributes of the honeysuckle, the shade tolerance, and the privacy. What else do you get with the pawpaw? You get something native. something that can potentially attract the zebra swallowtail butterfly, and of course something edible as well. It's a wonderful plant, and it tends to also be deer, insect, and disease resistant. What more could you want if you want to turn a patch of land from invasive plants to native plants? This pawpaw tree is interesting. This is not a cultivar, it's one that I bought when it was maybe 4, 5, 6 inches tall that was grown from seed. And when I planted it, I actually stepped backwards and mistakenly snapped a branch off. I thought I killed the tree, I almost gave up and threw it away. But I went ahead and put it in the ground. At this point, it's about 6 years old, and I would estimate probably about 30 feet tall, maybe even taller than that, which is generally about as tall as a pawpaw gets. What's interesting is it grew very quickly, and I want to show you a little bit of the environment that I think helped it grow quickly. Number one, it is an understory tree because you see that it's in woodlands with other trees. But you notice it has a little clear window where it does get some sunlight. As a matter of fact, right now you can see the sun beaming through the very top leaves of this tree. Number two, you might notice it's right on a creek bed as well. The pawpaw is a taprooted plant, and that taproot's going to be able to go a little bit lower than the fibrous roots of other plants. With a creek right here, it gives it a wonderful cache of nutrients. Now, it had a lot of vegetative growth. It has flowered. I've not yet harvested fruit off of it because it's not yet fruited. But I'll rule this year out because we had a very late freeze in Cincinnati this year, late in the spring, which froze a lot of blooms off. So we'll see how this guy does next year. So what pollinates a pawpaw tree? Not a bird, not a bee, not a butterfly. Pawpaw trees are pollinated by insects that are attracted to decaying matter, which is kind of weird. Typically very small bugs. So I want to show you something that has worked out well for me. I like to call it my secret weapon. This is a composter that's full of bugs that like things that decay. I've found that the pawpaw trees that I have closest to this composter are the ones that pollinated the easiest. Good. I'm delicious when I lick my pawpaw. I'm delicious when I drop it like it's hot. When I go in the club, babe, I don't know what to do, 'cause all the boys, they want me, all the girls, they want me too, 'cause I'm delicious. I'm delicious.